It's time to talk about Las Vegas with Ira. Each week, Ira David Sternberg talks with the celebrities, entertainers, writers, and personalities who make Las Vegas the most exciting city in the world. And now, here's Ira.
My guest is Grammy-nominated singer-songwriter and guitarist Jonathan Butler, performing in the Chrome Showroom at Santa Fe Station this Sunday, September 25th at 8 p.m. For ticket information, go to stationcasinoslive.com, and for everything about Jonathan Butler, go to jonathanbutler.com, and you can hear him on Spotify and Apple Music, and you can follow him on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And Jonathan, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's good to be on your show. Absolutely.
Thank you, Jonathan. So where did you get your sense of humor from, your mother or your father, or both?
My sense of humor comes from my family. We all, growing up, we were extremely poor. So laughter was one of the greatest medicines that we had. And it's still to this day, I think we still laugh a lot about a lot of things. And my family, that's how we entertained. You know, there was no TV when I grew up. There was a gramophone record player that worked with a battery. And most of the times, my family, we knew how to make fun of each other, laugh about stuff, and that's how we got through life.
Humor was the currency of the family.
Humor was the currency of the Butler family and still is.
And there's 12 of you, right?
There was 12 of us.
Okay.
There was 12. We are now 6. I have 3 brothers and 3 sisters. The oldest is 80, and the youngest, which is me, I'm 60.
A young-looking 60, though. I was just thinking, if your family had, instead of 12, you could have had one more and had a baker's dozen.
I know.
So
I guess I was the last one that came into this world, and story has it that when I was the night when my mother was delivering me, she was struggling quite a bit, and the midwife, who thank God is still alive, I see her every year. Usually because of the pandemic, I haven't been able to go, but every time I'm in Cape Town, I visit her because she breastfed me and she delivered me. You know, she helped my mom, and so she was my mom's close friend. And so I was the last of the litter, definitely.
Were you the only one that got into music? And we'll talk about that in a moment, how at a really early age.
I'm not the only one that got into music. As a matter of fact, I grew up in a musical family, and we were all musicians. We are all musicians. Even the grandchildren are musicians, and the great-grandkids are musicians. So the Butlers are known in South Africa, especially Cape Town. We are known as, the Butler musical family. So my brother still sings, my sisters, my nephews and nieces, everybody. My mother was a singer and piano player, and my father was a banjo and guitarist and singer. So I got it from all of them. I got this love for music from my parents, absolutely.
Have your brothers and sisters had a chance to see you perform professionally in the United States, or just in South Africa, or elsewhere?
Only in South Africa. Only in South Africa, not in the United States, no. I'm the only one of my family that left South Africa to pursue my international career.
That took a lot of guts, didn't it?
Well, I think, I was given an opportunity, and I had to decide. South Africa was in the 70s and late 70s, in the very beginning, early 80s, the struggle was quite intense. It had intensified so greatly that in the midst of the struggles and the uprising and rioting, we were still sort of playing, and I was sort of campaigning with one of our political leaders, whose name is Alan Bussak. And so we were campaigning with him. And then when the opportunity came for me, this contract, I used to do demos at my friend's studios in Cape Town, downtown. And I made all these demos. I played all the instruments, I sent it. My manager at the time sent the stuff out to London Jive Records, London. And they said yes, they wanted to give me an opportunity to see if I would like to be in London if it didn't work out. So my contract was actually not a solid contract. It was almost like, let's see how he does before we, take him a step further. So basically I said yes. I talked to quite a few people that I trusted. One of them is my late pastor. And he said, God gave you an opportunity. God has given you an opportunity, and go. So I went to England, and I actually began to develop my songwriting skills. I did a lot of songwriting co-writing with other people in London. That's what the label wanted me kind of more to do, was do a lot of songwriting. So I collaborated with a lot of people, Billy Ocean. And of course, my writing partner was Julian Skinner, a guy that's from the States but lives in England. And we wrote a lot of music, and we ended up writing so much that I had a double album that the record company finally said, okay, we're gonna take this seriously and sign me. And my first album was introducing Jonathan Butler, which was a more instrumental, and the second one was Jonathan Butler, self-titled, and that was the double album that kind of really blew up and really blew up here in the United States. Yeah.
You were so young. I watched a YouTube video of you performing the other day. Well, it wasn't even a YouTube video of you performing. It was a YouTube of one of your records. So it had the picture of the 45. And, and I found myself reacting to it, which I don't always do with music, but it had what it had. And it was the first time I heard it. And you were so young, but it didn't matter. It was just very emotional.
Yes.
So,
I am an emotional guy. So everything that comes out on stage, I think it's even more revealing on stage, because I want to take people on a journey when I'm performing. I want people to experience what it's like. Maybe they can get a glimpse, a look into South Africa through my music and through my storytelling. And somehow I have managed over the years to woven the stories into the music. So you're really experiencing more than just a song, more than just the guitar playing. It's a little bit, it's everything to me. And I think it comes from the growing up as a young performer. I learned performing more before I became a recording artist. So the stage was more like my comfort place.
You were, I think, at age 7 was your first time on stage.
Yes, I was 7 years old when I first performed. Yes, my mom and dad had variety shows, family variety shows in the community civic halls, where they used to have a lot of shows and functions and stuff. And that's where I really got my first taste and start, was for singing for my mom and dad and in the community. And I went on to sing for Malay choirs, competing. And then I started competing in Carnival, and I won a lot of trophies. I don't know where those trophies are anymore. It's so crazy. I wish I had them still, but I won a lot of trophies. Yeah.
Not sports trophies, but performing trophies.
But performing trophies, yes.
Also, too, you mentioned in an interview that when you first began performing on stage, the audiences in South Africa or in that local area would throw coins on the stage.
That was the big, in Africa, that's still a big thing. They really like you, they will throw money on the stage. Well, I guess not anymore. They won't throw money.
Well, I was going to say, have you thought about incorporating?
The economy's not that great, right?
But have you thought about incorporating that in your act here in the United States?
I actually should say to them, listen, now when this song comes up, you know what to do. Start throwing. Don't throw your ATM machine, your ATM card, because I can't really do that. Just throw me the cash, But that was a real epic moment, because I remember singing Tom Jones' song Delilah, and I really loved Tom Jones. I actually thought he was like a black guy because he sang so soulfully, So yeah, I was like really into Tom Jones, man. The serious level, like this guy was like everything, So
did you ever get a chance to meet him?
No, but I do believe I wrote something for him on a record that The Art of Noise produced. I think I can't find the name of the song, and it's been so long. But yes, he was like my hero. And I sang the song Delilah, and when it came to the chorus, my Delilah, why? I fell on my knees. Something said, fall on your knees. I don't know where it came from, but I fell on my knees like James Brown, like Michael Jackson or whatever. And next thing I know, people are throwing money on the stage. And I put the mic down and I went to pick up my money. I said, screw the song. I'll tell you another funny story. I'll fast forward this quickly. I tell you, my brother Paul and I had a band with some friends of ours, and we were just kids. And so what we would do, we'd take a bus into the city and go to a nightclub. Now, bear in mind, those days it was apartheid, it was segregation, but we would go to the city and we would go to a nightclub, and we would ask to speak to the manager, if the manager would allow us to play a few songs. So we were allowed to play a few songs in this one particular club called Sorrento. And a lot of foreigners used to come to this club. So after our performances, this particular night, a guy walks up to the stage and I'm playing this big guitar. I'm like this little kid, sitting down playing this guitar. The guy comes up and he says, can you sing Mother by Barbara Streisand or something? So I said, yeah. We said, yeah. He said, I'll give you 50 Rand. I said, man. I said, we said, well, where's the money? The guy takes out the money. My brothers, they're all over me trying to get this money from me. And then what we did after the show, we would take like an ice bucket, and then collect at every table. We would collect, and we would collect like yen, French, all pounds. And then at the end of the night, they would kind of tally it up for us, and we would split the money, and then we would go buy something to eat, and then we'd take the bus back home, So
that's a great idea, because the club didn't have to pay you, but you made your money from the audience.
You made your money just taking your little, offering buckets like a pastor.
And then, of course, the song became popular, Come Back to Sorrento.
I know. I mean, it's like... I always, when I'm in Cape Town, I always go to down that street to see if the club is still there.
Right.
It was fun memories playing with my brother. Yeah.
You mentioned about apartheid, and I wonder, we talked about your sense of humor, but just the fact that you are able to transcend what you dealt with, you and your family dealt with, well, not just you and your family, but a lot of people dealt with, and to be able to maintain that sense of humor and prosper musically as well as spiritually, not everybody can do that.
I understand. I mean, my story is like, growing up poor and went to kindergarten. That's it, and from the kindergarten went on stage, went traveling,
Amazing. And I didn't realize that was beyond kindergarten. There was no formal schooling.
No formal schooling. I had no musical training. I was self-taught. I always use the phrase, I stole with my eyes and I stole with my ears. That's how I learned to play music. And of course, music was in my family and it's in my blood. But since I started so young, I went from kindergarten straight to stage, so, those early days were frightening days and lonely days and scary days, because I wasn't traveling with I had a brother that was on the road, but he wasn't exactly my guardian, so I had to sort of depend on other people there was one lady in particular that I will never forget for the rest of my life, forever. Her name was Auntie Vivian Kensley. And she was South Africa's own, Shirley Bassey, But she was the one who taught me English, etiquette, how to eat, not slurp. And so, there were so many people that kind of came around that were sort of older brothers and older sisters, and but it was a lonely time, and the only time that mattered to me was when I was singing. Then I was at my happiest. It's when I was singing, seeing all the joy come from people.
I think that's very typical of a lot of performers, that being on the road as an adult, let alone in your case as a child, but being on the road is the hard part, the traveling, the putting up with the nonsense, but on stage is where it's pure.
Yeah, that's honestly, it's still the one place that I find is my safe spot, because I know on stage nobody can hurt me, nobody can, touch me, or even though my journey through those days was pretty rough, and we toured rough too. It was like the touring was incredibly, we would be traveling in not like these luxury buses that they have today. I mean, we traveled in convoy, and we slept in theaters, we slept in stadiums, we slept in people's homes. It was like, I used the phrase, I was born in Cape Town, but I was raised in South Africa,
Understood.
I always sort of use that phrase when people say, "Where are you from?" I said, "Well, I'm from Cape Town." But I'll say, but I was raised everywhere else.
Exactly. Were you influenced by any other performers growing up? I'm thinking of, in particular, Miriam Makeba as an influence.
Oh, yeah. Well, I tell you what, I was very young, and so I didn't really know Miriam until I was older, and Yuma Sikela and Abdul Ibrahim, Kaifis and Netta Mbula, Kaifis Semenya. I heard of these names, but I was influenced by all of these people, like Auntie Vivian Kenzie. She was like an amazing performer. My brother was an amazing performer. His name's Danny, and my sister Sandra, they were incredible. So I had all these people that, like, some of South Africa's top jazz musicians were like, I was surrounded by these people, and sort of I was also sort of sneaking into their conversations about politics and the issues of the day. And I would learn from all of those conversations and watching them, because, we didn't have TV. South Africa television was introduced in the 70s, mid 70s.
Amazing.
In 74. And I was like the first black kid on TV, winning my first Grammy. So, and then the TV would just it would just turn off at 12 o'clock at night. The TV turned off.
Right.
You just see you see these red stripes. That's all you see.
What was it called? The South African equivalent to a Grammy? What the term is?
It's called a Sorry Award.
Okay.
Sorry Award.
Right. Yes, that's great.
I like to call it a Grammy because it was a Grammy.
Oh yes, absolutely in that context.
I feel like it's like it's probably one of my most precious things that I have in my home, because it was a time of great struggle and segregation and so to win a Sorry Award as a black kid in that room that is nominated only for white artists was quite an amazing moment, and so it was sort of something that really kind of stuck with me, because I remember winning. After I'd won, I left the building, and when I left the building, there was a bunch of white kids walking behind me, and then alongside me, and I could hear them whispering, here's this, derogatory term kid who won the Grammy. So it kind of stuck with me. Here I am, I'm winning this Grammy, and I'm going back to Cape Town the next day to the shanty house that I grew up in. So, but we were all elated. I mean, the country was elated that, that this happened. And there hasn't been like this, that kind of fame and notoriety since. I couldn't walk the streets. I couldn't be alone. The fans would just go completely berserk. So
how'd you keep your balance though in those days? Because you're still a young person, and here's you have this fame, and as you said, you couldn't walk down the street, and you seem to have both feet on the ground. You seem to be a very realistic person. How did you manage to navigate that?
Well, you know what? growing up poor and having that fame and gold records at that time, for me, I had no choice but to be humble. And there was no, had my father was right, if my father was wealthy or my mother was wealthy, and we had this really, that we had everything, maybe I would have been a different person. But the way I grew up, and it's like my fame belonged to my brothers and sisters. My success belonged to them, And I learned this very early in my life as a kid, was that my first envelope, wages packet, that little yellow packet that said Jonathan Butler, 25 Rand, which is probably $1 or $2 today. But that envelope, every week on a Friday, I would send that to my mother. My brother would have me go with him, and they put a stamp on it. I would sign it, put my mom's address, our house address, and send it to my mother. So I think humility was something that we inherited early in our lives as kids, and because we were surrounded by people that also lived in shacks like we did, but they were also people that lived in really beautiful homes, that we were surrounded by. So during my fame, I learned a lot of things. I learned that, when people realized that I lived in a shack, they didn't really want to visit the shack. And so that really was something that impacted me very early. And then I safeguarded myself. I protected myself from that. So I know exactly who I am, where I am,
right,
who I'm speaking to, the room feels like. And if I can, yeah.
Yeah, it's a case of being on both sides of the tracks and knowing pretty much, not to mix metaphors, but you also knew what side of the bread your butter was on, too, because it was your talent that took you through all that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yes, you're right. I knew that, even promoters, when they used to come to our home to ask us to do a show, they would honk their horn at the gate and they wouldn't come in. And I remember I was very young, but I wasn't arrogant. I was just young and perhaps a little bit frustrated that you would honk your horn at my gate and then you would ask me to come to you, to ask me to do a show for you when you can't come in and ask my parents, who's inside.
Right.
So a lot of those things, those little things, began to really affect my, made me really sensitive. Let's put it that way. It made me super sensitive about how I want to be treated and how people should be treated. Yeah.
No, that's an experience. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the song I referenced earlier that I listened to on YouTube. I Love How You Love Me. That was your version. And you're really young, but it just had a certain tone to it.
Yeah, I think I'm sitting right. I'm sitting right next to the gold record. I think I Love How You Love Me is on against this wall over here. That was that was so interesting a time. I mean, when I heard myself on the radio for the first time, I mean, I couldn't believe it, that it was me. I was like deeply like, man, I was out of my skin. I just really got so excited to hear to hear myself on the radio every day. It was like, oh my word, it's like, so it was more than a dream come true, because my father used to play music, every night. And we would listen to Tom Jones, and we would listen to radio, and I always used to wish one day, that I could be on radio and sing,
And you are. If I asked you to define what music you think you are identified with, I'm phrasing it purposely that way, what would that be? Because some people say, well, they have, there's different genres of music. But I don't think that you can be defined in one genre of music, but people try to. So from your point of view, what do you think your brand, quote unquote, is?
To be honest with you, I feel like I'm a world music artist. I'm a world music guitar player. I'm not. I play jazz. But I think I want to be accepted. Let's put it that way, as a world artist, because that's really the core of who I am, and that's my go-to. That's my wheelhouse. That's how I feel the most comfortable against all of what is out there. Because, again, it's like I never invented this word smooth jazz. I mean, it seemed that just came out when somebody just, I always like to say it this way. I woke up one day and somebody called me a smooth jazz artist. I mean, somebody just decided that they're going to call me a smooth jazz artist. You know what I mean? It's like, right. I don't know. I don't know how that happened.
That's, I guess, my point is that people try to define you, and it's better for you to define yourself. And you just did, which is a world artist, a world music artist. And that makes perfect sense to me.
Yes.
So this journey you take the audience on, is it different each time? In other words, if you perform, and you have obviously over the years, does the story about the journey get added on to the performance? I'm not sure if I'm.
I think it grows, and it gets into deeper places, because for an example, I performed in Norfolk, Virginia last weekend, and I remembered, like, I suddenly remembered a moment with my mother. And I was actually playing Song for Elizabeth. Before I was going to play Song for Elizabeth, I remembered a moment with my mother before she passed, and I took my mother to a mall to have lunch with her and to buy her some clothing, because it was she had developed dementia. So myself and my sister, I picked up my mother and took her to the mall and stuff, and I remembered certain things. So while I was telling the story about us being 12 children, my mother had 12 kids, I then remembered this moment that I had with her before she passed. And so, like I said, the story, it develops. It develops at every turn, because every time I play, it's never the same. I mean, the way I feel every day is never the same. So the music is going to be different every time.
Well, that's a great way to leave it. My guest has been Grammy-nominated and Sorry Award winner, Jonathan Butler, performing in the Chrome Showroom at Santa Fe Station this Sunday, September 25th at 8 p.m. For ticket information, go to stationcasinoslive.com. And for everything about Jonathan Butler, go to jonathanbutler.com, and you can hear him on Spotify and Apple Music, and follow him on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And Jonathan, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, man, it's great to talk to you. Very cool to talk to you. See you down there.
See you next time.
You've been listening to Talk About Las Vegas with Ira. Each week, Ira David Sternberg talks with the celebrities, entertainers, writers, and personalities who make Las Vegas the most exciting city in the world.
Bring us your fantasy.